Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Cindy here to read you a story today, and I thought I would read you a classic fairy tale that's for the whole family. It's a little bit scary, I'll warn you, but it does end up just fine, so stick with me, okay? I brought a fancy easel with me. Let me move it into place. I have a few pictures. Okay. This is a famous old story by the Brothers Grimm, and it is called Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time there lived near a large wood a poor woodcutter with his wife and his two children, Hansel and Gretel. His wife wasn't their mother, she was their second mother. The poor woodcutter had little enough to break or bite, and once when there was a great famine in the land, he couldn't even get his daily bread. And as he lay thinking in his bed one night, rolling around for trouble, he sighed and said to his wife, "What will become of us? How can we feed our children when we have no more than we can eat ourselves?" "Know this, my husband," answered she, "we will lead them away quite early in the morning into the thickest part of the wood, and there make them a fire and give them a little piece of bread. Then we will go to our work and leave them alone so they will not find the way home again, and we'll be free of them." "No, wife," replied he, "that I could never do. How can you bring your heart to leave my children all alone in the woods, for the wild beasts will soon come and tear them to pieces." What a mean stepmother! "Oh, you simpleton," said she, "we must all four die of hunger. You'd better build the coffins for us." But she left him no peace until he agreed, saying, "Oh, but I shall be so sad for my poor children." The two children, however, had not gone to sleep, for they were really hungry, and so they overheard what the stepmother said to their father. Gretel wept bitterly and said to Hansel, "What will become of us?" "Be quiet, Gretel," said he. "Don't cry. I'll soon help you." And as soon as their parents had fallen asleep, he got up, put on his coat, and unlocking the back door, slipped out. The moon shone brilliantly, and the white pebbles which lay before the door looked like silver pieces, they glittered so brightly. Hansel stooped down and put as many into his pocket as it would hold, and then going back he said to Gretel, "Be comforted, dear sister, and sleep in peace. God will not forsake us." And so saying, they went to bed. The next morning, before the sun rose, the wife went and awoke the two children. "Get up, you lazy things. We're going into the forest to chop wood." Then she gave them each a piece of bread, saying, "There is something for your dinner. Do not eat it before the time, for you'll get nothing else today." Gretel took the bread in her apron, for Hansel's pocket was full of the pebbles, and so they all set out upon their way. When they had gone a little distance, Hansel stood still and peeped back at the house, and this he repeated several times till his father said, "Hansel, what are you peeping at, and why do you lag behind? Take care and remember your legs." "Oh, father," said Hansel, "I'm looking at my white cat sitting on the roof of the house and trying to say good-bye." "You simpleton," said the wife, "that's not a cat, it's only the sun shining on the white chimney." But in reality Hansel was not looking at a cat, but every time he stopped he dropped a pebble out of his pocket upon the path. When they came to the middle of the forest, the father told the children to collect wood, and he would make them a fire, so they should not be cold. So Hansel and Gretel gathered together quite a little mountain of twigs. Then they set fire to them, and as the flame burnt up high, the wife said, "Now, you children, lie down near the fire and rest yourselves. We're going into the forest to chop wood. When we're ready, I'll come and call you." Hansel and Gretel sat down by the fire, and when it was noon, each ate the piece of bread, and because they could hear the blows of an axe, they thought their father was near. But it was not an axe, but a branch which they'd bound to a withered tree, so as to be blown to and fro by the wind. They waited so long that at last their eyes closed from just pure tired, and they fell fast asleep. When they awoke it was quite dark, and Gretel began to cry. "How will we get out of the woods?" But Hansel tried to comfort her, saying, "Wait a little while until the moon rises, then we'll quickly find the way." The moon soon shone forth, and Hansel, taking his sister's hand, followed the pebbles, which glittered like new coined silver pieces, and showed them the path. All night long they walked on, and as the day broke they came to their father's house. They knocked at the door, and when the wife opened it and saw Hansel and Gretel, she exclaimed, "You wicked children! Why did you sleep so long in the wood? We thought you were never coming home again." But their father was very glad, for it had grieved his heart to leave them alone. Not long afterwards there was again great scarcity in every corner of the land, and one night the children overheard their stepmother saying to their father, "Everything is again eaten. We have only half a loaf left, and then the song is ended. The children must be sent away. We'll take them deeper into the woods so they may not find their way out again, and it's the only means of escape for us." Her husband felt a heavy heart and thought it would be better to share the last crust with the children. His wife, however, would listen to nothing that he said, and scolded and reproached him without end. Given he agreed the first time, it was now harder for him to refuse again, so in the end he consented, but with a heavy heart. Children, however, had heard the conversation as they lay awake, and as soon as the old people went to sleep, Hansel got up, intending to pick up some pebbles like before, but the wife had locked the door, so he could not get out. Nevertheless, he comforted Gretel, saying, "Don't cry, sleep in quiet. Good God will not forsake us." Early in the morning the stepmother came and pulled them out of bed, and gave them each a slice of bread, which was still smaller than the former piece. On the way Hansel broke his in his pocket, and stooping every now and then he dropped a crumb on the path. "Hansel, why do you stop and look around?" said his father. "Keep in the path." "I'm looking at my little dove," answered Hansel, nodding a good-bye to me. "Simpleton," said the wife, "that is no dove, but only the sun shining on the chimney." But Hansel still kept dropping crumbs as he went along. The mother led the children deep into the wood, where they had never been before, and there, making an immense fire, she said to them, "Sit down here and rest, and when you feel tired you can sleep for a while. We're going to the forest to get wood, and in the evening, when we're ready, we'll come and fetch you." When noon came, Gretel shared her bread with Hansel, who had strewn his on the path. Then they went to sleep, but the evening arrived, and no one came to get them. And in the dark night they awoke, and Hansel comforted his sister by saying, "Wait, Gretel, till the moon comes out. Then we shall see the crumbs of bread which I dropped, and they'll show us the way home." The moon shone, and they got up, but they could not see any crumbs, for the thousands of birds which had been flying about in the woods and fields had picked them all up. Hansel kept saying to Gretel, "We'll soon find the way." But they did not, and they walked the whole night long and the next day, but still they did not come out of the wood, and they got so hungry, for they had had nothing to eat but the berries which they found on the bushes. Soon they got so tired they couldn't drag themselves along, so they lay down under a tree and went to sleep. It was now the third morning since they'd left their father's house, and they still walked on, but they only got deeper and deeper into the wood, and Hansel saw that if help did not come very soon they would die of hunger. At about noon they saw a beautiful bird sitting on a bough, which sang so sweetly that they stood still and listened to it. It soon stopped, and spreading its wings flew off, and they followed it until they arrived at a cottage, upon the roof of which it perched, and when they went close up they saw that the cottage was made of bread and cakes, and the window panes were made of clear sugar. "We'll go in there," said Hansel, "and have a glorious feast. I'll eat a piece of the roof, and you can eat the window. Will they not be sweet?" So Hansel reached up and broke a piece off the roof in order to see how it tasted, while Gretel stepped up to the window and began to bite. Then a sweet voice called out in the room, "Tip-tap, tip-tap, who raps at my door?" And the children answered, "The wind, the wind." And they went on eating without interruption. Hansel thought the roof last tasted very nice, so he tore off a great big piece, while Gretel broke a large round pane out of the window and sat down quite contentedly. Just then the door opened, and a very old woman walking on crutches came out. Hansel and Gretel were so frightened that they let fall what they had in their hands, but the old woman, nodding her head, said, "Oh, you dear children, what's brought you here? Come in and stop with me, and no harm shall befall you." And so saying, she took them both by the hand and led them into her cottage. A good meal of milk and pancakes with sugar, apples, and nuts was spread on the table, and in the back room were two nice little beds covered with white, where Hansel and Gretel laid themselves down and thought they were in heaven. The old woman behaved very kindly to them, but in reality she was a wicked witch who captured children and built the bread house in order to entice them in. But as soon as they were in her power, she killed them, cooked and ate them, and made a great feast. Witches have red eyes and cannot see very far, but they have a fine sense of smelling like wild beasts, so that they know when children approach them. When Hansel and Gretel came near the witch's house, she laughed wickedly, saying, "Here come two who shall not escape me." And early in the morning, before they awoke, she went up to them and saw how lovingly they lay sleeping with their chubby red cheeks, and she mumbled to herself, "That will be good bite." And she took Hansel up with her rough hands and she shut him in a little cage with a lattice door, and although he screamed loudly, it was of no use. Gretel came next, and shaking her till she awoke, the witch said, "Get up, you lazy thing, and fetch some water to cook something for your brother, who must remain in that stall and get fat. When he's fat enough, I shall eat him." Gretel began to cry, but it was all useless, for the old witch made her do as she wished. So a nice meal was cooked for Hansel, but Gretel got nothing but a crab's claw. Every morning the old witch came to the cage and said, "Hansel, stretch out your finger that I may feel whether you're getting fat." But Hansel used to stretch out a bone, and the old woman, having very bad eyesight, thought it was his finger, and wondered very much that he did not get fatter. When 4 weeks had passed, and Hansel still was quite lean, she lost all of her patience and wouldn't wait any longer. "Gretel," she called out in passion, "get some water quickly. Be Hansel fat or lean, this morning I will cook him and eat him." Oh, how the poor little sister grieved as she was forced to fetch the water, and tears ran down her cheeks. "Please, someone help us now," she exclaimed. "Had we only been eaten by the wild beasts in the wood, then we should have died together." But the old witch called out, "Stop that noise! I will not help you a bit." So early in the morning Gretel was forced to go out and fill the kettle and make a fire. "First we will bake, however," said the old woman. "I've already heated the oven and kneaded the dough." And so saying, she pushed poor Gretel up to the oven, out of which flames were burning fiercely. "Creep in there," said the witch, "and see if it's hot enough, and then we'll put in the bread." But she intended, when Gretel got in there, to shut up the oven and let her bake, so she might eat her as well. Gretel knew what her thoughts were, and she said, "I don't know how to do it. How shall I get in?" "You stupid goose," said the witch. "The opening is big enough. See, I could even get in myself." And she got up and put her head into the oven. Then Gretel gave her a push, so that she fell right in, and then shutting the iron door, she bolted it. Oh, how horribly she howled! But Gretel ran away, and left the witch to burn to ashes. Now she ran to Hansel and opening the door called out, "Hansel, we're saved! The old witch is dead." So he sprang out like a bird out of his cage when the door is opened, and they were so glad that they fell on each other's necks and kissed each other over and over again and cried. And now, as there was nothing to fear, they went into the witch's house, where in every corner were buckets full of pearls and precious stones. "These are better than pebbles," said Hansel, putting as many into his pocket as it would hold, while Gretel thought, "I'll take some too," and filled her apron full. "We've got to go now," said Hansel, "and get out of this enchanted forest." But when they'd walked for 2 hours, they came to a large piece of water. "We can't get over," said Hansel. "I can't see a bridge at all." "And there's no boat either," said Gretel. "But over there swims a white duck. I'll ask her to help us get over." And she sang, "Little duck, good little duck, Gretel and Hansel, here we stand. There is neither stile nor bridge. Take us on your back to land." So the duck came to them, and Hansel sat himself on, and bade Gretel to sit behind him. "No," said Gretel, "that will be too much for the duck. She'll take us over one at a time." This the good little bird did, and when both were happily arrived on the other side and had gone a little way, they came to a well-known forest, which they knew the way better than every step that they went, and at last they saw their father's house. Then they began to run, and bursting into the house, they fell into their father's arms. He had not had one happy hour since he'd left the children in the forest, and his mean old wife was dead. Gretel shook her apron, and the pearls and precious stones rolled out upon the floor, and Hansel threw down one handful after the other out of his pocket. Then all their sorrows were ended, and they lived together happily ever after. That was kind of scary, wasn't it? Sometimes stories scare us, but we can always learn things from them. I hope you enjoyed it. I just have one more thing to say to you today. There's a poem that I love, and it's about mothers that read to their children. The last paragraph of the poem is called The Reading Mother, and it is written by Strickland Gilliland. But the last paragraph means so much to me. I hope it means something to you as well. "You may have tangible wealth untold, caskets of jewels and coffers of gold. Richer than I you can never be, for I had a mother who read to me." Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye.